Welcome to Inspiring Teachers, a show bringing you classroom tips, motivation, and stories from successful educators. Join Tavis Bean and Danny Hogger as they explore the why of teaching.
Hello, and thanks for joining us on Inspiring Teachers today. Before we get going, thank our friends at AmpedUpLearning.com. Use promo code HoggerHistory10 for all kinds of learning activities, resources, lessons, worksheets, and so much more. Follow them on social media because they're always giving away cool stuff at Amped Up Learning, and we appreciate that they're owned by two teachers. They support teachers who create, and teachers can find wonderful lesson plans there to enhance their classrooms. Support the Hogger History Store while you're there, and you'll just be blown away by the things you can find. Promo code HoggerHistory10, that's AmpedUpLearning.com. Now here's today's edition of Inspiring Teachers. I hope you'll really enjoy it. Like, share, subscribe, and send it to a friend or an administrator. Thanks for listening.
This reminds me of something that I recently saw on social media where somebody was chastising millennials for having to take adulting classes because they don't know how to balance checkbooks and change a tire. And it's really like, well, we were never taught those things. I was personally, but that's just the family I grew up in. But a lot of people were never taught those things because they were always done for them by their parents. And so what we've really done is we've learned that we might need to relax a little bit on the rigor and focus a little bit more on self-sufficiency and the ability, well, you don't know how to log in? I'm going to let you kind of figure it out, maybe give you a few scaffolding here or there, but you really need to learn how to do this.
Well, and I think that goes from the college level all the way down because I had two in college and one in high school when all this started. And so seeing my college students being able to figure out their own path through the virtual classes and, like you said, managing their own emails and, you know, things like that, along with my high school students, but then having that elementary perspective as well, it was interesting to see that across the board, they were all struggling with similar concepts, you know. I mean, from college level all the way down to first grade, you know, my first graders were learning these things because they had to, but my older kids who should have already probably known how to do that, were having to learn it because there wasn't somebody there to walk them step by step. So.
And that's also true with teachers too. You know, not every teacher is as tech savvy as the next teacher. I'm still learning. It's something that I need and struggle with. I'm not great at managing things like email. I'm just old enough that when it came around, I was kind of, yeah, whatever, I'll get to that later. But I kind of caught in between. But yeah, we need to have that now.
I think we're seeing, and I think you're all alluding to it, is that learning skill factor, and it's how you learn and understanding that every person learns differently and having the opportunity to really see how each child learns, not just from the scope of like the front of the classroom or even walking around the classroom and hanging out with each person. Like one of the things I love the most about the virtual class is that voice can look like something different. So your goal setting and your goal setting are not the same, but this is what's working for you. And I know because you've tracked it, and I know because this was your point of failure, and I know that this is how you changed it up. So it's a really interesting opportunity to connect to kids on a micro level and a macro level, and to really see where the gaps are in their learning skills, especially in grade 8, because I know what they need to do for high school. I can really focus for each child what they need in a unique way because I can manage my time however I choose, as long as everybody's being productive and I don't have a classroom management issue. That's like the gift of my class. My 28 students are incredible. It could have gone not that way, but it did go this way.
But that's an interesting thing too. Yeah. It's a very interesting thing to think that there are some worries that are actually taken away, right? If we're doing government class, I don't have to worry about the conversation strolling out of control or somebody being disrespectful to someone else because we're all taking our turns listening. And it's helped us be more understanding in our classes where we let someone finish a point completely without cutting someone off. And that is a gift to be able to do that. And then be able to be sure you preserve everybody's chance to speak and be heard. And there have been some advantages like that I will miss at some point because I really appreciate the quiet student that's worried about what someone might say behind their back does not have to worry about hearing anything while they're speaking. And there's a few things like that I kind of like from a radio show perspective where we take calls and I try to check in with everybody every day. And there's a certain goodness to it too. While there are many trade-offs, like everything in life that we're not getting, there's some cool things that are actually a part of this that we'll have to find ways to incorporate when we return as well.
Well, and Danny, I think you really, hit the nail on the head there. I know that people have been worried about social skills, during this time, but I have seen our social skills grow because we are having to work on turn taking and respecting somebody else's conversation and not only that, but you don't have as much problem, at least I don't in my virtual setting, with kids not participating, because you are monitoring everybody. And so for me, it's been easier to make sure that everybody is participating. And I think they understand that they can't hide behind the person that's going, to talk the most or, do whatever, because they know that eventually they're going to have to, take part in the conversation or submit their work. And so that part has been interesting to see how their social skills and communication has grown, just peer to peer, but also peer to adults. So
appreciate it. Thank you very much for sharing that. I like that as well. Dr. Eric, when you've spent a lot of time writing about deliberate homework and metacognition and lots of different things where you're thinking about why, the purpose of instruction, what are you talking to your staff about as far as workload? Because I've decided from the very beginning that this is different, so I'm not going to treat it the same as in class. We do our work in class, and I will, if somebody's not doing an assignment, I'll have them verbally assess. I want to get that feedback and know that they're learning, but I'm going to make it as simple as possible to get that achieved in this format. What are your thoughts about this year? Because we've got a wide range of teachers in here and subjects, and lots of people listening as well, wondering if they should be in a new format or if they should be doing what they've always been doing.
Yeah, right now the focus is a lot on what are students doing synchronously or asynchronously. So what are they doing live with you and what can they do independently? And so sometimes you can flip some of that and have them do some of the learning independently because you're giving them asynchronous activities. But if I just connect it with homework, that connects nicely to me of just independent practice during blended learning or remote learning, whatever it is. And when I focus on amounts, it's really focusing on being reasonable and meaningful. So whatever it is, I think that's what it needs to be. And then I explain it in my book regarding reasonable completion time, complexity, and frequency, because I think those are the characteristics that you need to think of. But then if you want to make the work meaningful, which we really all should, then there's ways to make it more meaningful. If it has a meaningful purpose, connect it to a learning target, the format and the sequence. So I talk a lot about that in my book and give a lot of examples. It's really professional development where you can just read it and it forces you to answer some questions to talk about it. But I think concisely, it's just meaningful and reasonable work. And I think now the more you can connect to the student, give them choice, give them voice, allow them to connect to their passions, the better. You don't need to think of a 24 question math activity anymore. I know that's the common workbook page. That's a workbook page. The first 20 are review and the last four are basically stumpers that they can't get. So how about you flip that and you do the thinking during synchronous time and you talk about how to think, how to behave when you make a mistake. But ultimately for the homework, it could really be 4 problems. It could be differentiated based on how the student was performing. It could be a reflection question. So I think a lot of it is just thinking differently about homework, about unlearning how we thought of it before. And again, just being purposeful, concise, and reasonable.
Perfect. Sounds great. And continues the theme of let's think differently to apply meaningful instruction. It's great. Tavis, did you have anything that you were thinking about during the last few conversations we've had?
Well, one of my big angles is to bring in the empathy aspect as well and really understanding the kids and what they are going through. And I want to get that message out there to the teachers as well, because there can be a little bit of tension and there is a lot on social media among teachers about how much rigor we should diminish and how much empathy we should bring in. And so I'd be interested to hear what you guys have to say on that topic, because I think it's a very, very raw, very important topic that we're talking about right now. And I think that it's going to have repercussions for when we actually go back into the classroom as well. Now, just to lay everything out on the table, I am a very, very big advocate for empathy in the classroom and giving the kids as much support and as much grace as possible. That's my stance, but at the same time, I want to leave it open for people who might have a different position on that as well. I also teach woodshop, which is a very different mindset as well. And I used to teach science, I've taught math, I've taught elementary school, but now as a woodshop teacher in distance learning mode, my empathy is through the roof, because it's like, does a kid really need an F on their report card for their woodshop elective class when they haven't followed, Anyway, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say on that in each of your perspectives.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's make that our final subject for today, since we always talk about beginning, middle, and end. Let's close with this. So Noah, empathy in the classroom. Your thoughts?
Actually, I think Nicole go first, and then I'm good.
That's what I meant.
No, it's fine. I just wanted to say that when I was a kid, I used to complain about school being hard, and my dad would say, Nicole, it's supposed to be hard. If it's not hard, you're not growing. And I think because he said that to me literally 9 million times, I thought a lot about that, and I still think about that. And I think that school is supposed to be growth. It's not supposed to be torture, and it's not supposed to be compliance. And it can be hard, but in a good way, because I think that when we have empathy and we look at where people are coming from, and I hope that this semester we're asking a lot of questions to ourselves, to each other, to our students, because we have a great learning opportunity as we go into this probably final semester of this weird new normal. But what I wanted to say is that I just really hope that as we go forward, we can recognize that when we meet people where they are, there's still a huge growth opportunity. And it doesn't have to look like 24 math problems, like Dr. Youngman was saying, for every student. Everybody learns differently, everybody grows differently. And when we're inspiring and not requiring, like the staff room says, we're inspiring people to want to grow. So I think that this is an opportunity for us to look at things more that way.
Excellent. And I thought of hearing things over and over again. My old boss at Salvation Army used to say, if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. So go ahead, Noah, as well. Oh, did we have our first disconnect? We may have had a little bubble. Liz, would you like to go ahead?
Would love to. So empathy is a huge, huge point that I focus on in my classroom. I talk a lot about it in my book, Redefined. My big thing is that if you think back over the classrooms as an adult that you've been a guest in, or as a child that you were in, the favorite classes that you have were the ones who had the most empathy in them, because empathy promotes and just an environment of understanding and acceptance of a person's situation or feelings. And so I think when we do that, when we make that the priority and we let kids know right off the bat, not just kids, but their families as well, that this is a classroom where you are going to be successful, and you're not going to be successful based on where you're supposed to get to, but you're going to be successful on where you came into this room and the progress that you're going to make that is specific to you and your goals. Then you are setting not only your kids and families up for success, but you're setting yourself up for success as well, because you are going to feel the joy and the triumphs that they have in your classroom, just like they are. And I think that this year we've been forced to be flexible, and we've had to understand and really use empathy to understand where our students and families are and the struggles that they're going through, and take all of that into consideration. So, you know, and my district has been amazing about that. They have been so gracious with our students and families, and, you know, they take into consideration, you know, whether a family is working all day and then having to come home and do virtual learning at night. So, you know, our turn-in times are flexible based on what their situation is, because we understand that everybody's situation is unique right now. And my hope is that that what we've learned from this is moving forward, it won't just be one teacher or two teachers or three teachers who does that, but it becomes the new norm, where we're all putting ourselves in somebody else's shoes and saying, what would I want done for me if I were in that situation? What kind of understanding and flexibility would I need? And I think this has also really forced us to see that our equity isn't really so equitable, because, you know, one-to-one is great, but one-to-one when you don't have Wi-Fi is not so great, you know, and one-to-one, you know, when you can get online and you can participate, but you don't have the other materials that you need to do the science experiment or to do the math problem, you know, you don't have those tangible manipulatives that, you know, the elementary level needs, and sometimes, you know, that the secondary level needs as well. Then you're really not as equitable as you could be. And that's another thing that I think our district has done a great job of, is putting those things in our students' hands and just communicating with them that if you are not able to do something because you don't have it or you don't have access to it, let us know and we will do our best to get it to you. And I think that's the way we should be all the time, not just in a pandemic. So hopefully that's the thing that we take away from it.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Youngman?
Yeah, Liz made some great points about relationships. I think if we're talking about empathy and kindness, you need to focus on relationships. How can you inspire and really get to know your students so you can get the best work out of them? My dissertation was about grading, so a lot of my focus also is on just effective grading practices, so we're not penalizing students. But back to Tavis's question just about empathy, my feedback would be, you know, see, listen, feel, and understand and relate to and connect with without holding judgment. I think people can do that when we talk about empathy. And as I was thinking through this last couple of days about empathy, I don't think enough people are doing the next step, taking any actions. So how can you reflect about trends? How can you support? How can you make potential modifications? What actions can you do? I think that's the next step, because Twitter has done a great job. Well, I guess I've just been finding it about gratitude, empathy, and growth mindset. But the next step is actually doing something about it, doing something about equity. So now that you can seek to understand someone, what changes will we make to actually empower them, I think.
Excellent. And with about 3 minutes left, thank you so much for your thoughts. Noah, would you like to join in? Glad you returned.
Maybe I won't get kicked out this time, but I think that empathy is really about creating space where everybody gets to see and be themselves. And it's about understanding that that space is your construction or your co-construction. And if you leave room for every single person in your class to be a part of it, every single person wants to be there. And then every single person gets to grow on their own continuum, on their own way, in their own voices, and in ways that are meaningful and exciting, and that, you know, stress you out only enough to help you grow, but not so much that you're not totally psyched to do the work at home, not necessarily the homework, because you're always at home. So how do you make this time distinct for them and special and create shared space, but also go back to that one-to-one concept that's not just one device to one person, but one teacher to one learner. And we can do that in ways we couldn't do before because we're learning virtually. And that's something I really look forward to continuing to, instead of taking back to my classroom, take it forward. So I just want to thank you for this chance to talk about all the things we can be doing this year together and separately for our students.
Absolutely. And thank you all for making this a shared space to bring all those wonderful things together.
Really
Tavis, you wanted to say something?
Oh,
Yeah, this is just a wealth of good stuff to talk about and to take back and to leave time for everybody. It's such a wonderful point to end on, to grow at their own pace and be a part of it. And they will, if given that time and the genuine invitation to do so. Go ahead, Tavis.
Oh, and to bounce off that, we are the ones that can facilitate that and to spread that message to other teachers as much as possible. So many teachers have this idea of they're not going to get that in the real world. And what I want to tell the teachers is that you are the real world and they are the real world. And the more that we give them the empathy, the more that becomes the real world norm. And that's my message for 2021.
And also to subscribe to your Making Fun channel, right?
Oh yeah, don't forget that. If you want to take a break from teaching and do some DIY and craft, you can check out my show Making Fun on YouTube.
And if you need music in the background, check out Danny Hogger Music while you lesson plan. And there we got all the plugs in. So there we go. And as well, please follow all these lovely people. We're going to put their Twitter links in the description. They have wonderful blogs and things that you can all make part of your routine. For Tavis Bean, for Liz Savage, for Nicole Viscotti and Noah Danielle and Dr. Eric Youngman, I'm Danny Hogger. Thank you for being an inspiring teacher, for liking, sharing, and subscribing, and we'll see you all in the next edition. Until then, class is dismissed, everyone. Thank you. After 12 years in broadcasting, I've really tried to create a classroom environment that is dynamic while still being genuine and authentic, looking at current events and bringing them in frame with what we are learning historically. There's so many ways in which your program could be better if you just improved on what you're already doing. You're working hard to benefit students, but are you thinking about your voice and how your program is entertaining or is instructive? Take a look at my book, A Broadcaster's Secrets to Teaching, to find stories and reflections on how I turned a career in radio and TV into an engaging book to improve my classroom philosophy and become a more motivated educator. Thanks for watching.